Nathaniel Cross was leaving his office at 7 p.m. on a December evening when he noticed the snow was falling heavier than the weather report had predicted. At 34, as CEO of Cross Dynamics, technology company worth $3 billion, Nathaniel was used to long hours and empty evenings. His driver was waiting, his penthouse was warm, and he had reports to review before tomorrow's board meeting. He almost didn't see her. A small figure sat in a wheelchair at the bus stop outside his building, barely visible through the falling snow. She looked to be about 4 years old, wearing a red dress that was too thin for winter weather, with blonde pigtails and worn shoes. Her wheelchair was old and rusted, clearly secondhand, and she was alone. Nathaniel stopped walking. Something about the scene was profoundly wrong. Where were this child's parents? Why was she alone at a bus stop in deteriorating weather? He approached slowly, not wanting to frighten her. "Hello? Are you waiting for someone?" The little girl looked up at him with bright eyes and the most heartbreaking smile he'd ever seen. "Hi, I'm Sophie. I'm waiting for my mommy. She said to stay right here and she'd come back." "How long have you been waiting?" Nathaniel asked, kneeling down so he was at her eye level. Up close, he could see she was shivering, her lips tinged with blue from the cold dot. Sophie thought about it seriously. "A really long time. The sun was still up when Mommy left me here. She said she had to go do something important and I should wait right here and not move no matter what." Nathaniel felt ice settle in his stomach. It was now dark, had been dark for over an hour. This child had been abandoned at a bus stop in winter weather for hours. "Sophie, I'm Nathaniel. Can I ask you some questions? Do you know your mommy's phone number?" Sophie shook her head. "I don't know numbers yet. I'm only 4, but Mommy will come back," she promised. Nathaniel looked around. The street was busy with commuters hurrying home, but no one was stopping. No one was paying attention to the small child alone in a wheelchair. He pulled out his phone and called 911, explaining the situation while trying to shield Sophie from the wind with his body. "Are you taking me away?" Sophie asked, her voice suddenly scared. "Mommy said I shouldn't go with strangers, but it's so cold and I don't think the bus is coming anymore." "I'm going to help you get warm and safe," Nathaniel promised, "and we're going to find your mommy, okay? But right now, you need to be inside, where it's warm, okay?" He took off his wool coat and wrapped it around Sophie, tucking it carefully around her small body and the wheelchair. She looked tiny inside it, but some color was already returning to her cheeks. "You're really nice," Sophie said. "Most people don't see me. I'm invisible lots of times." The words hit Nathaniel like a physical blow. This child, abandoned and freezing, thought she was invisible because people walked past her without helping. The police arrived quickly, along with an ambulance. Sophie was assessed for hypothermia and exposure while Nathaniel explained how he'd found her. A search of the area found no sign of Sophie's mother, and the child couldn't provide an address or any information that would help locate her family. "We'll take her into protective custody," the officer said. "She'll be evaluated at the hospital and then placed with child services. Coming with you," Nathaniel said. Again, it wasn't a question. At the hospital, as doctors examined Sophie and warmed her carefully, Nathaniel made calls. His assistant, his lawyer, anyone who could help him understand what would happen to this child who'd been left at a bus stop like unwanted luggage. The story that emerged over the next few hours was heartbreaking. Sophie had cerebral palsy, which affected her mobility, but not her mental capacity. Her mother, overwhelmed by the challenges of raising a disabled child alone and struggling with addiction, had simply left her at the bus stop with a note pinned to her dress that said, "I can't do this anymore. Please take care of her." "What happens now?" Nathaniel asked the social worker. "She'll go into foster care," the woman explained. "But I'll be honest with you, Mr. Cross. Children with disabilities are difficult to place. Many foster families aren't equipped to handle the medical needs, the accessibility requirements, the therapy appointments. Sophie might be in the system for a long time. That's not acceptable, Nathaniel said firmly. She needs stability, specialized care, people who see her potential, not just her disability. The social worker smiled sadly. I agree, but resources are limited and families willing to take on a disabled child are rare. We'll do our best. What if I took her? Nathaniel heard himself say. The social worker looked at him in surprise. Mr. Cross, foster care isn't that simple. There are background checks, home studies, training requirements. And with respect, you don't seem like the typical foster parent. Then tell me what I need to do, Nathaniel said. Because that little girl has been abandoned once already. She's not going to be abandoned by a system that sees her as too difficult. I have resources, a home that can be made accessible, the ability to provide her with every therapy and medical intervention she needs. Tell me what I need to do to keep her safe. It took Nathaniel's considerable influence, his lawyers working through the night, and the fact that emergency placements were limited. But by morning, he'd been approved as Sophie's emergency foster parent. Mr. Cross, the social worker said seriously before releasing Sophie to him. I want to be clear about what you're taking on. Sophie will need physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. She'll need medical equipment, accessibility modifications to your home, specialized education. This isn't temporary help for a child in crisis. This is a long-term commitment to a child with complex needs. I understand, Nathaniel said, and I'm ready. The first few weeks were chaos. Nathaniel's penthouse was transformed with ramps, grab bars, accessible furniture. He hired a team of therapists and a nurse, but found himself not wanting to delegate Sophie's care to others. He took time off work, the first real break he'd taken in years, and focused on learning everything he could about caring for Sophie. Sophie, for her part, was wary at first, clearly waiting for Nathaniel to leave her somewhere else, to decide she was too much trouble. But gradually, as Nathaniel showed up consistently for therapy appointments, learned how to help her with her exercises, read her stories, and made her laugh, she began to trust. Why do you want me? Sophie asked one evening as Nathaniel helped her with her bedtime routine. My mommy didn't want me because I can't walk right. She said I was too hard. Nathaniel felt rage at Sophie's mother, but he kept his voice gentle. Sophie, your mom was wrong. You're not too hard. You're perfect exactly as you are. You have cerebral palsy, which means your body works differently than some other people's bodies. But that doesn't make you less valuable or less lovable. It just makes you, you. I need help with lots of things, Sophie said, her eyes welling with tears. I can't run or climb or do stuff other kids do. That's true, Nathaniel acknowledged. But you know what you can do? You can make people smile with your jokes. You can remember every single dinosaur name after hearing it once, which is amazing. You can be brave, even when you're scared. Those things matter so much more than whether you can run. And Sophie, needing help isn't bad. Everyone needs help sometimes. That's what people who love each other do. They help each other. Do you love me? Sophie asked in a small voice. Nathaniel realized with surprise that he did. Somewhere between the bus stop and bedtime stories, between therapy appointments and learning to braid pigtails, he'd fallen completely in love with this brave, funny, brilliant little girl. Yes, he said honestly, I love you very much, Sophie. And if you'll let me, I'd like to be your dad. Not just for a little while, but forever. Sophie threw her small arms around his neck and held on tight. I'd like that. Can I call you Daddy? I'd love that, Nathaniel said, his voice thick with emotion. The adoption process took 6 months. Sophie's mother's parental rights were terminated after she failed to appear for hearings or make any effort to regain custody. No other relatives came forward. The path was clear, if unusual. During those months, Nathaniel's life transformed completely. He cut back his work hours drastically, promoted a co-CEO to share responsibilities, and made Sophie his priority. His business associates were shocked by the changes. He turned down a meeting with potential investors to go to a physical therapy appointment. His coo asked incredulously, "Sophie needs consistency and support." Nathaniel replied simply, "The investors can wait. My daughter can't." He became an expert on cerebral palsy, on accessibility, on adaptive equipment. He joined support groups for parents of children with disabilities, learned from their experiences, and discovered a community he'd never known existed. His penthouse filled with specialized equipment, but also with Sophie's artwork, her collections of stuffed animals, her laughter. "You've changed," his oldest friend observed one evening when he'd stopped by and found Nathaniel on the floor helping Sophie build an elaborate castle out of blocks, positioning them where she could reach them. "I hope so," Nathaniel said. "I was so focused on building a company that I forgot to build a life." Sophie reminded me what actually matters. When the adoption was finalized, Nathaniel held Sophie close and made her a promise. "I found you at a bus stop when you needed help. But Sophie, you saved me. You showed me that success isn't about money or power. It's about loving people and being present for them. You're my daughter now, officially and forever. And I promise you, you'll never be invisible again. You'll always be seen, valued, and loved." Sophie, now 5 and much more confident than the scared child from the bus stop, said seriously, "You're the best daddy in the whole world. Because you saw me when I was invisible. You didn't walk past me like everyone else." Years later, when Sophie was in middle school and Nathaniel had become a prominent advocate for disability rights and accessibility, they'd sometimes talk about that December evening that changed everything. "I was so scared," Sophie would admit. "It was getting dark and so cold, and people kept walking past me like I wasn't even there. I thought Mommy wasn't coming back, but I didn't know what to do." "Why do you think Dad stopped?" Interviewers would ask when they told their story at advocacy events. "'Cause he's the kind of person who sees people others ignore," Sophie would say. "He didn't see my wheelchair and think that's too hard or that's not my problem. He saw a child who needed help, and he helped. It's really that simple," Nathaniel would add. "Sophie taught me that disability isn't about limitation. It's about navigating the world differently. She's accomplished so much, not despite her cerebral palsy, but including it as part of who she is. She's brilliant, determined, compassionate. The world tried to tell her she was invisible, that she was too much trouble. I'm grateful every day that I was able to show her the truth. She's extraordinary." At Sophie's high school graduation, where she gave a speech about resilience and challenging assumptions, she talked about that December evening openly. "When I was 4 years old, my birth mother abandoned me at a bus stop because she couldn't handle raising a disabled child. I could have died that night from exposure. I could have disappeared into a system that sees children with disabilities as difficult to place. But a man walking past chose to stop, chose to help, chose to become my father." She looked at Nathaniel in the audience, tears streaming down both their faces. "Dad taught me that I'm not invisible, that my disability doesn't define my worth, that needing help isn't weakness, it's just part of being human. He taught me to see my wheelchair not as a symbol of limitation, but as a tool that helps me navigate the world. Most importantly, he taught me that I matter." Okay. She wheeled herself to the edge of the stage, looking out at her classmates and teachers. "I'm going to college next year to study disability rights law. I want to help other kids who feel invisible, who are told they're too hard, who are abandoned by systems and people who should protect them. Because my dad showed me that one person choosing to stop, choosing to see, choosing to help, can change everything." Nathaniel never regretted the decision he made that December evening. His company continued to thrive under his shared leadership model, but it was no longer the center of his universe. Sophie was the scared little girl who'd been left at a bus stop, became a confident young woman who changed accessibility laws, who advocated for disability rights, who showed the world that disabled children aren't problems to be solved, but people with infinite potential. And sometimes, on snowy December evenings, Nathaniel and Sophie would drive past that bus stop, and they'd remember. They'd remember the night everything changed because one person stopped, because one child was seen, because love proved stronger than abandonment and fear. "Thank you for seeing me," Sophie would say. "Thank you for letting me," Nathaniel would reply. "You gave my life meaning, Sophie. You showed me what real wealth looks like, and it has nothing to do with money." If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe for more tales of compassion, overcoming cruelty, of seeing people others ignore, and of families formed through courage and love. Leave a comment about times when someone saw you when you felt invisible, or when you chose to stop and help when it would have been easier to walk past. Share your thoughts on disability rights, accessibility, okay, and treating all people with dignity, regardless of their physical abilities. Remember, children with disabilities aren't problems to be solved or burdens to be avoided. They're human beings deserving of love, support, and every opportunity to reach their potential. Sometimes the child the world sees as too difficult becomes the person who changes everything. If someone is brave enough to stop and see them,